Good afternoon, good evening. This is Carla from MindPlore with Carla and Friends. And today the topic is taking the power of our words and how we use our words. And I am really excited about this topic. I'm really excited to talk to the people we're going to talk to. And I want to remind you that I would love you to check out our YouTube channel, my Gigglefest University, and not only subscribe to it, like it. Well, it's really the other way around. Like it and become a part of it, because all of MindPlore, and when it was we had different names for it, can be found on that channel. Having said that, Jeanne, can I ask you to do your thing so I can finish doing my thing?
Sure.
And we will see each other now.
Okay. I'd like to welcome Krueger and Roshana Price to the panel today. So welcome, guys. And as Carla said, we're going to be talking about the power of words. And we've been talking about some really deep subjects for the last couple of weeks, but this one really catches, as a writer, I know the power of words. As somebody who's trained people in how to present, finding the right word is half the battle. But I found two quotes that I want to share that kind of encapsulate the power. One is from a great American philosopher known as Unknown. And Unknown said, "But the human tongue is a beast that few can master. It strains constantly to break out of its cage. And if it is not tamed, it will run wild and cause you grief." The other one is from Yehuda Berg, and he said, "Words have energy and power with the ability to help, to heal, to hinder, to hurt, to harm, to humiliate, and to humble." So you can see they're very powerful, and they can illustrate a picture of what's in your head. So I want to throw that out to Roshana real quick. How does the power of words resonate in your head today?
Yeah, so I always go back to the biblical reference of death and life is in the power of the tongue.
Oh, I like that.
Yes, death and life is in the power of the tongue. So be sure you're speaking life to the things that you want to talk into or speak into in terms of your life, and even the people that you're talking to as well. So that's the first thing that comes to me.
Kurt.
Well, I like world scriptures too, because I've been involved with a lot of interfaith work, and it's so wonderful because there's so much richness in it. And one of the world scriptures says, "The word was made flesh." And so many people think it's only about this guy named Jesus, the Christ. And it's actually about everything, because what we focus on, we get. If I say bad words, what does it create? It lowers your energy. Your immune system goes down. That's the person saying it and the person receiving it. When we use good, empowering, positive, present words, people feel it. And we get to be able to not only feel better, the immune system goes up, you're more relaxed, you feel better without having to do anything. Just a simple word makes you feel better. It can be a soothing word. It can heal. I was down in South Africa once, if you don't mind a little story. And I was playing beach ball with these wonderful Africans. And this one guy spikes the ball like really powerfully and great, but he lands wrong. And you hear this horrible crack. You'd never want to hear that. I've been an athlete all my life, and I've done sports psychology all over the world. I had 5 offices around the world. And so I dragged the guy off, because that's what you do in beach ball, let everybody play, take the guy off so something may be able to be done. And I asked the guy if I could actually help him because I have this background. And he said, okay. And I put my hands on his knee because there's something called touch therapy, and it can calm a person down. And I guided him through a simple breathing practice. Breathe in through your nose because it goes to the lower lobes of your lungs. I'm describing all the details of what happens with the breath into his body. For 45 minutes, I'm doing that. But for the first time in my life, I gave a thank you to God for having healed him. Just like Jesus was supposed to have done the same thing. He said, thank you, Father, for having healed him. He didn't blame himself. So I just mimicked the dude. I just modeled after him. I just gave it a go, because whoever thought of doing that? It's him, but he's the model, according to what people say. So periodically I would say, thank you, God, for having healed him. 45 minutes later, he got up and walked away. I never even learned his name. If I can do that, what can't you do? And years later, I did it with a scout backpacking trip. Somebody had twisted his ankle severely, had a staff when we, got the troop together a little bit tighter instead of spread out on the backpacking. And I said, would you mind me doing this? And boom, same thing. He put the staff down and walked out. So what can't we do? We just get to be able to follow those positive things. I thanked God as if it was now, not would you please, not like it's knowing that it's going to happen. The power of intention is another way to look at it these days. There's so much that we can do by just following and using our words intentionally. The power of intention is so powerful. I don't try to do things anymore. I just do them. It may not happen right now, but I'm doing it. And I'm not working at it. I get to do what I do now. It's a pleasure. I follow this heart that guides me into doing all this crazy stuff. Beautiful picture behind me. All you have to do is try taking it. I did up the street. So what can't you do? Attempt and achieve. And that was my motto when I was a 16-year-old boy. So there you go. How's that? Too much, huh?
Oh, the stories are great, Kurt, because that's how we learn. That's how we learn. I mean, in the stories in the Bible, Jesus said, I have this power and so do you. I'm paraphrasing, of course. But it is the power of words, and it's what we say to ourselves. And we've talked about this in several episodes back. The self-talk is probably, when I think of the power of words, I think of that voice that I've kind of named David Letterman. He's a bit snarky. So when I see something and it's a little bit snarky, I go, okay, David, I've got this. But by naming it and giving it that Letterman-esque kind of comedic name, when it's really nasty, because it can be, I can say, okay, I'm laughing at you and I got this. Because the words that we say inside our head are probably more important than the words we say outside. Because if I were to be honest, I think I'm really meaner inside my head than I've ever been to anybody outside. I tell you, there are things that happen. Yesterday I was in an office and somebody was having a birthday party, and I was thinking, without saying it out loud, that, good Lord, I think I'm the oldest person in this room. And that's always a surprise to me because I still feel like I'm 20. And one of the young men started cutting the cake, and he cut 3 or 4 pieces, and there were like 15 people in the room. He cut 3 or 4 pieces. He gave it to the birthday person, and then somehow or another he walked away. And I put on, without realizing it, I put on my mommy shoes and I went over and I started cutting the cake. And I thought, what causes me to do that? There's something in my head that says you can jump in and take over, because you've done this, and that's what every mother has done. Mothers make sure that events work. And then when I left, there was another woman who's also of a certain age, and she started laughing, and she was like, one of us had to do it. But I know that there's a voice in my head that's Mama Jeanne, and there's a voice in my head that's David Letterman, and I have one that I call Dad. That's the one that says you can do better no matter what, and some of these voices have words that people should never hear coming out of their own head, and that's why I'm putting names and characterizing them so that I can dissipate some of the power that they have, because I need to work through it to get to that intention that you talk about, Kurt. And I think that as Yehuda Berg says, words can help and heal, but they can harm. So I like to try to heal and to help more. So, I see somebody with a really pretty outfit on. I'm not thinking it's sexist for me to say, oh, your dress is really pretty. No, I'm saying, hey, that looks really good on you, or that color really makes you spark, because we all need to hear that. We need to hear we look okay. We need to hear that somebody likes us to be around. And we don't know how somebody reacts to a word, because I may say something like, that really looks good on you, but they may be in a space where they don't hear it that way. And, they may hear something and go, what am I, chopped liver? And because we don't even know what triggers other people, and words can trigger. And that's one of the things that I want to put out there, because I have a perception and I have a perspective, but it's not your perception or your perspective. Perception is how you see things, and perspective is how you see things, and perception is how you interpret things out here. So that together they color your world. And some people see everything in grays, sometimes dark grays, sometimes light grays, where others see things in pure black and pure white.
The one of the great teachers in India was a guy who taught who Indians think of as God. Rama is one of the incarnations of God according to the Hindus. And his teacher was a guy named Vashishta. And to teach this little prince, who was a young little boy out in the jungles, he had to make his own house. He had, with a cow dung floor and a mud hut and all that kind of stuff. He had to make his own bow and arrow, had to learn that from this guru. Vashishta, before Rama was going to go off to take over the kingdom, Rama said, what is your highest teaching? And he said pretty much what you said, Jeanne. The world is as you see it. It's either half full, there it goes, or it's half empty, or it's the truth. And most people don't understand what the truth is when I mention that particular aspect of half full or half empty. And what we say is what we get. I wrote in the little chat about indigenous people do not have put down words. They don't have a word like stupid. Calling you stupid, your blood sugar goes down right away. You feel a little droopy shoulders. You don't have any less energy just because of that simple word. And too many people denigrate others to make themselves feel better. And so let's make everything flourish by being positive, present, and encouraging. Encouraging is so much, it gives people courage. That's why it's called that. So we get to have more enthusiasm. God within, that power of God within, that enthusiasm, that's what it means. Yeah. Roshana.
So I think so I was going to say, I love all the comments, and absolutely, words have so much power. They are building and creating or tearing down. I also would like to add that as an individual, you have the opportunity, the choice, the power to take any words, positive or negative, and make them mean what you need them to mean for you to move forward. So the example I'll give is related to bullying, because I love talking about specifically adult bullying, because a lot of times I'll say society as a whole tends to think about bullying, and then we go to middle school,
Right.
kids, younger people, when it happens in all places, spaces, economic backgrounds, etc. And there's still this need to understand that when bullying happens, when someone says something positive or negative, when the words come, we each have individual power to say, hold on a minute, does that even serve me well? So when someone is speaking something negative, oh, look at you, Carla, you've got that pink shirt on, which I love, by the way. Me loving it or not has no bearing on, or should have no bearing on, how you internally talk to yourself about it. If you love it, love it. And I think that's where the word, even the positive affirmations that other people speak into others' lives, can get twisted, because ultimately my opinion doesn't matter. It really has no bearing. And when somebody is bullying you, you can take the negative things that someone is saying, and those negative words can be power to help you actually see your power and your might, and what I like to call your awesomeness on the inside.
But it also goes one step further, which is why I thought of this topic. I was talking to someone, and I knew what I meant. I didn't mean it as negative. I meant it very neutral. And the person got so angry at me because I used one word which meant different, different in her mind than in my mind. And I said, I don't understand the problem. I could not understand why this person was so upset. And she said, you use this word, and that word means something different in my mind. And I said, well, I'm really sorry. I didn't mean it that way. I just meant it to say what I was thinking. And it was never meant to hurt anyone. And I think people forget that. This is a reality, that we all have words in our minds that are slightly different from anyone else, because our perception, how we see the world, is different. And because of how we see the world, we may say house, and someone who grew up in a one-room studio apartment won't think that a house has lawn and more rooms, and they don't know. They're thinking, oh, my house is my studio apartment, and that's what a house is, or whatever. But we limit our understanding of words to how we have been living our life. And we need to realize that there may be more to life and more to the word than we are giving it credit for. I hope that makes sense, because it goes a little further, deeper. And then when you also, Vasishta, you brought up Vasishta and the Indian philosophy. Even with that, we in the West, many of us have no idea to think that God is everywhere. We think, oh, he's just up there, wherever up there is. And that changes how we think of life and the world.
That's very true. The power of words is it's awesome. And you bring up a good point, Carla, because one of the things when when I'm working with people who want to be public speakers or who need to give presentations, I try to make them think about their audience and the people who are going to be taking the words that they're giving. Because if you walk into a room of scientists and you're going to give a scientific presentation, you're going to be using words that are about 50 feet long, or as I call them, $50 words, yeah, that those folks understand. But if you go into a room of brilliant high school seniors who are getting ready to change the world, but you use all these $50 words, they're not going to understand what you're trying to say. And so you need to understand the perspective of the people that you're speaking to. And what happens a lot of times is we use a word and it might have 15 different meanings to 15 different people. It happens a lot. As I was growing up and, sharpening my capabilities in Silicon Valley, it happened all the time because something in one segment of technology meant something completely different in another segment of technology. Mm-hmm. And we started making fun. The communicators started doing something we called buzzword bingo, because people were using these words and not having a real meaning behind them, because they were using them as jargon or shorthand for people of like mind. And that got really confusing on a number of levels. But then you hear somebody like Neil deGrasse Tyson speak about astronomy and you go, oh, because he speaks in plain language. Mm-hmm. It's very difficult to be speaking to various people when they don't understand. You may as well have somebody speaking Spanish sitting down with somebody who speaks Japanese and somebody who speaks Polish. They're never going to understand. They're going to know through nonverbal mannerisms and cues, but they're never going to really understand the full words. You need to have a translator. And that I want to go back to the inner mind. That's our translator. How we see and how we hear gets translated. So, you have to work on the inner stuff when it comes to communication in general, but picking and choosing words. So in your example, you had no idea what this woman's going to interpret when she hears your word. So, one of the things that we need to remember is kindness. To say, are you sure that's what you need? Because when I hear this word, this is what I hear. Because I'm not a mind reader. As much as I'd like to make my son believe that I am, and believe me, he does. He may be 30, but he still thinks I know everything because I've told him that over and over. I'm not a mind reader, but I am an interpreter. So one of the things that I used to do when I would talk to technologists and need to write a press release, I would say, I have to write this for somebody at the 8th grade level. So I'm going to ask you some really dumb questions, some really basic questions. So forgive me, but let me start here. Now, this person now thinks I'm going to ask him some very simple questions. He has no clue that I have no clue. But I've set it up so that I can ask those questions. And then what I was able to get was gold out of them, because he's going to explain, at a very simple level what he's talking about. And then I can ask the question, why is this important? And then in a simple level, find out why it's important to a broad audience. Mm-hmm. So that was a trick that I used to try to get across and over that bridge, because I find even today, I walk into a group of people and they're talking and I'm not sure that I understand what they're saying, even though we speak English. And my friend who's a relationship coach, she often says, when she talks about communication between men and women, we may as well have different languages because we use the same words, but we don't know what we're saying to each other. And that's true, not just with men and women. That's true, with me and you, with me and Kurt, with me and Roshana, mm-hmm. because we all have different experiences. So words mean something different. In general, the fundamental part of the word is the same, but how we use it, how we interpret it, how we put power behind it, those are all personal. Kurt, I saw your hand kind of jump.
The reason is it's really the same in every country. I had 5 offices of the Institute of Sports Psychology at one time, one in Tokyo, one in Sweden, and so on. And so when we go over to these other countries, I'm also speaking to usually athletes and coaches. And they're incredibly intelligent in some areas of life. And to use words that they don't understand is like crazy. Also, speaking quickly is something that needs to be slowed down, because some of them are sort of processing a little bit more than I would process, having just have English as a language. So the communication factor, like you said, ask them simple questions and find out where they're coming from and what their experience is. And it is a real communion together with that wisdom that we have inside of each of us that allows us to have that deep understanding, standing under the wisdom. And again, words, like there's a woman now that has done Michael Beckwith's books. She's his editor. I don't know if you know who Michael Beckwith is, but he started Agape International Church type of thing. I've known him since the 80s. He's an amazing dude, but the wordsmith can feel into all the different meanings of words and give the exact word that you really have as an intention to make. And if we use a $100 word, even more than that, 50, we get to be able to use that as a clue to upgrade people's vocabulary too, but we get to explain it and give them the reason why we get to explain it. Because our whole education system is usually dumbed down and usually appealing only to the left brain. So when we appeal to images more, and that's why I have a beautiful image behind me, the image mellows people out. The feel of that image makes people feel more cuddled and caressed. So we can use words that do the same thing, because who doesn't want to be cuddled and caressed? Just how I'm speaking it makes you almost feel it. And we've lost the way to be able to bring that kind of expression into our life. We're usually going like this because it's 30 seconds. I got to get it all out. You see the news, or you see the sports, or you see this, it's all boom, 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 boom.
Sound bites.
Yes.
Right.
Yet, when we communicate, it's at a different rate. It's at a different vibration. And vibrations are the things that people feel and experience at a deeper level, at the reptilian brain level, at the mammalian brain level, and even up here in the neocortex. So what do we do? Now, I use some science there, and if people are curious, they can communicate with me. SuccessSystemsInternational.net. Email me about any of the stuff that we talk about, because what are we here for? When you are better, we are better. And when we are better, the planet feels a lot better.
You bring up a good point, Kurt, about all the nonverbal parts of communication and how important it is, because words are like 7% of our communication. But that tells you how important they are. They're a small part of the total communication, but if you don't get the right word, everything rolls into it. So the minute I say the wrong word, you're going to go and pull back. I may not see it, consciously, but I'll see a micro expression. When we walk in the room, somebody looks at us and they'll perceive several micro expressions. So they'll know if I'm friendly, if I'm not, if I'm open, if I'm not, if I'm smart, if I'm not. They'll make all these decisions before I even open my mouth. But when you think about that, it's that small percentage of our communication, the power we put behind words is enormous. You know, you said I was, and I'm just by repeating whatever it was that I'm taking umbrage to, gives it power. So it's dampened my light because of how I perceive that word. Now, if you turn around and put a name on that, it's like, okay, that's your truth. That's not my truth. Then I can kind of block that dampening a little. But that takes some real insight and training to be able to catch it as it's happening and say, that's your truth. That's not my truth. Now let's move forward. You know, a very wise woman, a friend of mine named Cynthia, God rest her soul. She was an HR expert. She once told me during a clash of big personalities that we had to deal with, she said, there's his story, there's her story, and somewhere in the middle is the story.
Mm-hmm.
And that means we all need to be able to look at things from our own perspectives as well as somebody else's perspective. And understand. So Carla, when your friend said, this is what this word means to me, that was actually a very powerful moment, because most time we walk away and we don't even know that there was a break, because they won't say it, you know, and that's, to me, that's fear. You know, let's clear the air. It takes a lot of fortitude and a lot of bravery, you know, to walk up to somebody. When you said this word, this is how I took it, and I'm not happy. I need to clear the air. So that was a gift, even though it probably was a little bit fraught with stress, let's say. But that's how we learn.
And I agree
Yeah.
wholeheartedly on what you just said. That was my point, that we use words, and the words may not have the same meaning. I have a friend I speak to all the time, and he's not an English speaker, native speaker, and he loves to text. And I'm like, okay, I don't understand what you're saying. And for him, it's very clear. And no, it isn't, you know, and there's a misunderstanding. We all use text messages. I use them more now in the past 4 years than I've ever used them before. But I always get nervous about it, because one word can throw the whole conversation out. Unless we have that desire to keep communication going, we could walk away and not know what the other was saying at all.
Right.
And we're nodding our heads. Yes, yes, yes. I'm so glad you're telling me that. And at the same time, as we're saying this, and I see it on the English show all the time, they don't know what I said. And I have no idea what they said to me. And yet we go through this. And many times I'll say, wait a minute, stop. Let's speak a little slower and let's understand each other. And even for someone to say that to someone, it causes all kinds of confusion, because they don't understand what I don't understand. You know, it's like, but I said it clearly. No. And how the conversation goes is sometimes not very pleasant, although it's meant to be, because there's such misunderstanding.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think it's interesting because you said that the desire. So ultimately, when we're using words, what are the intentions? Why are you even talking to other people and to yourself? because we're doing both all the time, whether we're aware of it or not. There's constantly a dialogue internally and externally, or there's a dialogue that's external that then goes internal, or vice versa. And so that desire to even put the words out there have to first be recognized. Why would I want to say, hey, I'm not understanding what you just said, or I really appreciate your insight? What is that? That's a part of, I believe, the way in which communication is enriched, is really understanding why. I also believe that that will, in some cases, limit the amount of words that are said, so that the nuances of the feelings that Kurt was talking about earlier can really come through. Because sometimes the feeling is more than enough to communicate everything that is needed to be said between two people that are really looking to communicate and connect.
And, there's cultures that are hardly ever speak. There's the Sami, the people up in north of the Arctic Circle in Finland and Scandinavia. And when you walk into their home, because I used to teach at Stockholm University, and I was actually married to a Swede. But going up to Norrland, when you walk into their home, they'll have some coffee there for you or whatever. But you may say, "How are you?" And they'll say, "Fine." And it's quiet. They don't say anything more. They'll answer your question or whatever, but they're content being with you. Mm-hmm. And it's a much different thing for us who are from a foreign land, big time, who have all these stimuluses coming at us, from the TV to the radio to the computer to this, that, and the other thing. And they're just simply being with us. And it's such an opening. The opening allows that heart to be felt and communicate clearly that I really don't need to say anything. I can be with these people. And it's so powerful. And this idea that we have to speak, we have to be heard. It's so important. If I say something wrong to somebody, or somebody says something wrong to me, so to speak, I may simply say, "Ouch." And they go like that. What happened? And I say, I don't feel good because I'm not sure what you really meant there, because it didn't feel good to me. And so this is what I heard. What is it that you meant? Because I know you're such a kind, loving person. And when we approach that kind and loving person, that's who we are. When we are that kind and loving person, when we're upset during our day and we go outside, we bring that upset outside in our communications. That's why we have something that was developed called the Peacemaker Meditation. It's simply peace in everything, everything with peace. And you rock like this, peace in everything, everything with peace, because it's a psychosomatic spiritual practice that calms the mind, calms the breathing, calms the heart rate. And we get to be able to get into a space of hearing with deep hearing, instead of what we're used to just from the ears. So thank you.
Yeah, you bring up how frenetic life is. Mm-hmm. And I've said this before, just with social media and media alone, we're getting 34 gigabytes of information thrown at us. And, I worked it out one day it's 100,000 words, or a shorter Stephen King novel, and 7 hours of video. If you think about that, when do you have time to live if you're consuming all of this stuff? We have this very powerful computer inside our heads that actually filters a lot of information so that we don't get overwhelmed. And yet we allow ourselves to be overwhelmed because, you know, we've been trained slowly over the last 20 years to really love those, you know, 60-second videos, or get that quick tweet because, you know, 240 characters, I can tell a whole lot of stuff and I can react to the world and everybody needs to hear from me. And you just go boo, 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 boo. But that's all the animal part of the brain, the monkey mind.
Mm-hmm.
That just keeps you moving around, and that makes some people, I'm going to say some people, feel important. And the folks that I meet who can take a deep breath, who have built in meditation, or as you are right now, rocking back and forth, they're slowing things down a little bit because they want to hear what's going on. They want to listen. They want to understand. But we feed off the energy of the people around us. So it takes a kind of fortitude to be able to simply do what you're doing right now, Kurt, and just being in the room. I see you back and forth, and I'm thinking, oh, how much I want to hold my granddaughter, because I automatically do this when I'm holding her, and there's a reason for it. But we don't have to. We can choose not to be this frenetic. We can turn off the media, whether it's the news or TikTok or, you know, Facebook. I actually put myself on a Facebook diet a long time ago, and I've been able to manage about a half hour of going through, seeing what's important on my newsfeed, adding, you know, checking in with the groups that use it as a communications tool, and not spend a whole day, which it seems with some people it takes that kind of attention. But my time needs to be productive in a different way. So in that case, we have to look at the words, the communication, and prioritize, which is also a very strong word, but not everybody understands it. You know, you have to, Stephen Covey said, you need to understand what's critical and important and what's critical and not important, you know, and then look over to what's not critical, not time sensitive and important. That's the second quadrant versus non-critical, non-important. And when you start to look at those things in that quadrant, the things that are not critical, not time sensitive and important tend to be planning, saving, finding out, moving a project forward, you know, doing those things that set you up for success, where the things that are critical and important become crises. And you can be in crisis mode all the time. And, you know, somebody who's practiced PR for decades, I know exactly what that means, you know, and it's as frenetic as the scenes in His Girl Friday, when they would learn something about the thief that was going to get judged and was put on death row back then. You know, the newsroom would go instantly nuts, and everybody's on the phone and they're making a lot of noise. That's kind of the crisis mode. When you want to be in the non-critical mode, thinking through and being strategic. But that's the point that I think we miss. So prioritize and strategic, because strategic looks beyond, you know, what's causing the frenetic activity. Strategic is looking at Carla's interaction with her friend and taking a deep breath and saying, I hit a chord. I can tell by your face. What did I do? Not saying I did anything wrong, but what did I do? And taking the first step. It's looking beyond what's actually happening in your conscious. It's understanding, and it's being super conscious of how energy is enveloping us all. So I know when I walk into a room, and we're going into a meeting, I'll know if people are comfortable or not. You know, I don't go much deeper than that, because if they're not comfortable, I feel a tension, and I have to stop, center myself, take a deep breath, and then say, hello, everybody, and give this big smile so that I can change the energy just a little bit. where if they're comfortable, there's no problem. I just walk in, sit down, and go, "Hi, how you doing? What's going on?" And understanding that that's a kind of communication that nobody taught me. It just came because I became aware of it, that everybody has this power. So there you go. Power, priority, and strategy. 3 very powerful words. I think we listen to people in leadership and we react. I'd prefer to listen to people in leadership and respond, be thoughtful, and not react in a crazy way. Carla.
Now, I agree with you. But again, remember, we use a lot of text messaging. So
Yes.
The moment someone responds in a manner that we had never expected, because we're texting, we can't see their face, they can't see our face, there's a problem, there's an issue. And I have a very dear friend who says to me, "Well, I'm not in the mood to talk, but text me what you're saying." And I'm like, I don't want to, because I know what'll happen. And the person comes back, text me, text me, text me. And I end up, in order to compromise, I end up texting. And in the text, then I will say, if you have any questions, ask about the words I'm using. Because know that just the use of the words can cause a lot of confusion.
Well, but it's really important because texting, emailing, sending out something with only words on it is 2-dimensional communication.
Right.
You don't get to see all the nonverbal stuff. You don't have a tone of voice. You don't have a physical stance of how somebody's showing up. You don't have a pentameter or a timing to how they're saying stuff. And so it's very easy to be misinterpreted. Very, very easy. So actually, I used to talk, I would talk with the kids that, boy, that makes me sound old, the kids that I used to work with that worked for me, the young professionals. I would say, use simpler language and ask more questions, because in an email exchange or a text exchange, it's very easy to be misunderstood.
Yeah.
Roshana?
Yeah, so I'm kind of processing everything that's been said, because as I listen and really listen to understand, I think there's an assumption that's being made that people actually don't know when they don't know. So in order to ask the question for clarity, they know, oh, I don't understand. And there are some times in communication when people actually think they do understand. And so there would be no need to ask a question. It's just that we're looking at 2 different things. Or the understanding of, oh yeah, I know, when you don't know, but you don't know that you don't know. And so that's what I'm sitting here processing is we have to really be, as we're even talking about it today, we have to be careful to not make more assumptions that people know, because they don't. And so I always go back to, let me check myself first. Let me check.
It's a very good point.
Yeah.
It's a very, very good point. It's hard to admit that you don't know what you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And so in a text exchange or in an email exchange, and if you don't know, how are you going to ask the questions? So I guess it's up to the person initiating that needs to say, was that clear, or did you need me to look at it a different way?
Or if you send something, so 2-dimensionally, you have to keep the dialogue going. So that's the one thing that is missing in the days of marketing and like email marketing and that kind of thing, where you're sending out information and you really have no idea if people are processing it and what that looks like. It's not, maybe it's going to get to 2-dimensional to then become 3-dimensional. Maybe it won't. Versus, yes, I sent you an email. Now let's talk about it. Let's talk through what you understood. This is what I meant. Are there any clarifying questions? This is how I intended it. So there have to be layers of communication to ensure that all the words that matter, some words matter more than others, those words, really everyone has a common meaning.
But also, when you say that, they may have a common meaning. Like someone had a discussion with me about the Insan political party. Politics could be just two people, me and Roshana, talking, and politics have started because we may not agree or we may not disagree. But politics starts then. And the person said, well, maybe it shouldn't be called a political party. It should be a movement. And I went back to Rehan and I said that to him, and he said, but it is a political party, Carla, and I'm not going to change it. And I said, right, that's what you want, and that's perfectly fine. And go with it. But in going with it, realize, and this will happen whether you're the king of the globe or not everyone is going to understand what you mean. And I said to him, it's fine. I have no problem with it. I'm just telling you some feedback that was thrown at me, and I wanted you to hear it. But you do what you need to do.
Can I bring up something?
Yeah.
Right? Because one of the things I used to teach was peak performance for academics and sports. I taught it to teachers. And we've been sitting for almost an hour. And most people online are sitting so much of their day at a computer doing work. Your brain gets to be like Jell-O when that happens. So a really good practice is to be able to get up and do what's called a cross crawl. Now I'm going to have to get off this, what do they call that? The screen background, and get into the ability to be able to show where I'm at. Because yes?
Just 1 minute. We do need to go off in 5 minutes. So
okay, I'm going to be real quick about this. And then,
okay.
Yeah. Okay. So we can stand up and we can bring our right knee to the left elbow as we breathe out. And as we stand up, we breathe in. Breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in. We do that for 15 to 30 seconds. And it oxygenates your body. Your brain uses more oxygen than any other organ in your body. The cross crawl movement connects up the neocortex to be able to have cross communication between the left and right hemispheres of the brain. And it allows you to open up all your learning centers. Just that simple practice. Takes only a short time. Teachers can use it. You can use it at work. It's a very, very important practice. You saw me swaying back and forth. It also is that microkinetic movement. And the sitting still doesn't get that flow of not only your blood, but also the energy in your body. So simple little things that we can do, we're going to enhance our life better. Thank you, Carla.
You're very welcome. Jeanne, did you want to say something before I close the show? You look like you have something on your mind.
Well, there's a lot of power in everything that was said today. And we used words, but we had a great conversation about words. And I can still recall sitting in my classroom as a kid, getting ready for a spelling bee and thinking, do I have to know how to spell this word? Well, yeah, apparently we do. We need to know how to spell them. We need to know how to use them. There's a lot of power, and the politics of everything is about power. who's got the power to make a decision, who's got a power to lead a conversation. But it all comes down to how do we use these words and how do people interpret what we're saying? It's a very deep subject, and I'm glad we were able to start a discussion.
It's beautiful.
And we will be able to go deeper on Thursday about the power of words. Roshana, I don't want you to think you're forgotten. Do you have a few words you want to end with?
Actually, no, I'm good, actually. I've enjoyed the conversation, and sometimes there is wisdom in silence. I will sit in that today.
I agree with that. I just didn't want to think you were being passed by. Having said that, guys, we have come to another hour of MindPlore with Carla and Friends. I am very blessed to have these people come and talk to me and deal with my craziness every week. But
I'm really blessed to be amongst all you beautiful and incredibly hearted women. And oh God, thank you.
Well, I wanted to invite you, Kurt. And remember, the one thing I said to you when I invited you, it's only going to be, you'll be the only guy possibly. And you said, okay, I'm fine with that. And I thought, okay, then I am not going to worry about getting another guy. If I get him, I get him. And if I don't, I don't.
I just drove over 3,000 miles with two women in the car. And it was magical because I got to sit there absorbing all of this dialogue and also sometimes participating, of course, and so on. So anywhere we are is an opportunity for us to grow. And when we're in the moment, that's the growth. Thank you so much. Love you.
Well, I am so happy to hear you say that. And having said that, I want to remind you guys, we will be back on Thursday with more conversation about the power of words. And remember, MindPlore is now on YouTube too. Feel free to watch it on YouTube. It's been on there for a few weeks now, and you can go back and see old shows as well as today's. And do me a favor, like our YouTube channel and subscribe. I really would like to see it grow. By the way, we have almost 300 subscribers now on GiggleFest University.
Great.
So I'm excited about that. But like the show, if you think it's good on YouTube, just give us a like, please. And with that, we are going to wave goodbye. And I and Jeanne will be back on Thursday. Let's wave goodbye.
American Sign Language.
Bye, everyone.
Cheers. Shalom.